Okay, welcome everyone. You're turning the volume off. You shut your volume off.
Unmuted.
No, your volume on your computer.
If anybody's volume is up, we need to mute it. Or mute it. Yeah.
You good? You good? Okay. Okay, I apologize for the delay, technical difficulties. So welcome everyone. I call the meeting to order at 6:33 for the Board of Selectmen, June 8th, 2021. And I'm going to go ahead and read the preamble. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law GL Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Southboro Board of Selectmen will be conducted via both in-person and remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting may do so in person. They may watch or participate in the meeting remotely by finding the meeting at www.southborotown.com/remote meetings. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southborotown.com. In the event that, despite best efforts, the public is not able to access the proceedings in real time via those technological means, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. So welcome everyone. Just want to get a few things out of the way. Chairman Braccio is not able to attend in person this evening and is participating via telephone and completed the appropriate paperwork that I signed off on. Secondly, we are recording this meeting. We are not streaming live on YouTube tonight as we want to create an equal playing field for all the firms that we are interviewing tonight. We did have 4 scheduled interviews tonight. Unfortunately, one notified us today that they were not going to be able to make it. So we will be accommodating that firm next week. After that interview is complete, then we will be releasing the video on YouTube so that they're all available at the same time. We will not be deliberating tonight. We are just conducting the interviews, and there will be no public comment. This is a special meeting just accommodate those interviews. After the final interview is done next week, then we will be holding a special meeting to deliberate and make a decision for town council. So at this time, I'd like to call Mead, Tellerman, and Costa up. They're here in the room with us and will be participating at the front desk here. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to do my best to repeat this every time so that you get all the information. So we're interviewing 4 firms for town council. Like I said a few minutes ago, one isn't available tonight, but we will be conducting that interview next Tuesday and then a special meeting to make a final determination. We're recording this session this evening and it will be made available to the public after the last interview is complete. To speak, you can hit the spacebar to unmute and then again to mute. We are using our own microphones here, so we just have to give each other a second to unmute so that way we don't have the background noise. As I mentioned, Chairman Braccio is on the phone, so I will cue her when it's her turn to speak, and we just need to give her a minute to unmute as well. We've allocated 30 minutes for this interview. We'd like you to do a 3 to 5 minute intro. That will be subsequent. It will be followed by 8 questions between the 4 of us, 3 of us sitting here, and then Ms. Braccio on the phone. The 8th question is a final question that is a wrap-up question to take 3 to 4 minutes. At the 25th minute, Mr. Purple will give you a cue saying you have 5 minutes left. So wrap up hopefully the 7th question that you're on, and then Mr. Healy will be doing the 8th question. So there's 8 questions. Please pace yourself. And I am going to do the timer for the 30 minutes, and Mr. Pripple's going to do the timer for the 25. Okay, I'm going to go on mute. And oh, actually, I'm not. I'm going to cue Ms. Braccios. She should do the first. I'm sorry. Nope, we're not doing questions yet. You're going to go ahead and do your intro.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, let's give that a try. Jay Tallerman with Mead, Tallerman and Costa. With me is Kate Federoff of the firm. She's the director of our labor and employment group, and as well as assists everyone else in the firm in the general municipal stuff. Adam Costa was going to join us tonight, but I think you may have gotten your fill of him yesterday. So you get the 2 of us tonight. Let me just give you a brief background so we can get to the questions. We're a firm, we're about 17 years old as a firm. I was a partner at Copeland and Page, now called KP Law, for 6 years. And at the time, I had been doing a lot of work with Mark Bobrowski and Lisa Mead, who had started a firm to do mostly land use litigation, but also with an eye towards expanding towards general municipal matters, because Lisa has substantial background. She's a former 3-term mayor of up in Newburyport, was a city solicitor in Somerville. I decided to leave the practice at Copeland & Page, not because of any ill will, but because I felt that there might be a better way to practice municipal law. And I think Lisa and Mark agreed with me, not that they don't practice it well at Copeland & Page, excellent law firm. And I still have a lot of friends there. However, we felt with Lisa's experience as a mayor, I've been a town official in my own town of Norfolk for years. I'm still the moderator in Norfolk, that perhaps a more team-oriented approach could perhaps yield better results. An approach whereby we wouldn't be policymakers, of course, but where we would develop processes so we could be part of your team and be more responsive and take away the fear of you all picking up the phone knowing it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. And there are really 2 components to that. The first component was, well, we want to be responsive and we want to deliver those kind of services and work with you in a fashion that facilitates that by exploring those relationships, offering office hours, trying to be present, walking through, providing our experiences, doing site visits and the like. The second component of that was financial. And we felt that the almighty billable hour, which law firms still have to go with at some times to make a buck, might not always be the best fit for every municipality. And for sure, certain of our municipalities still are on the hourly basis, and that's what they prefer, and that's fine, and they find a way to manage that. But we develop different sets of billing arrangements, including total flat fee arrangements, whereby even for litigation, you never pay us an hourly rate. You pay the same amount every month. A majority of our towns, I would say, probably have gone to that method with certain exceptions, including labor and employment, which is a little too variable sometimes to do that. But it allows you the freedom to pick up the phone, even in April when your legal budget could be running dry, and get help on a problem without fear that you may go over your budget or may explode your budget. And that means that we could still litigate for you. The other offshoot of that is that it allows you to make decisions based upon what's good for the town versus what compromises you may have to make because your legal budget is running dry. So through those processes, we kind of built a firm on kind of this team approach, and it's really just kind of gone on from there. We've implemented other processes. About 5 or 6 years ago, we added Kate. She was an assistant city solicitor in Brockton and did a whole bunch of things there, but also ran all of their negotiations. She joined us and it really helped us up our game in terms of being even more well-rounded. So in addition to all the other services we provide, we can also assist in all the services that might come across a city solicitor's desk. And so on and so on. And the towns that have worked with us have developed a keen sense of knowing that they can call us and we'll be there. We're responsive. We want to work with you. We have a passion, as nerdy as that may be from time to time, in municipal law. We take this stuff seriously. Obviously, I've done a lot of work for the town already as special counsel. Mark knows that he could call me on a Saturday at 6 p.m. with a problem that is stuck in his craw, and I'm going to answer that. Your own town council, who's a good guy, knows that if he's got a conflict, I can cover, and we'll do so on a moment's notice. And we're all like that. We've developed that practice that way. So I don't want to dominate the talking. So I probably get right to the questions, or
Yeah, and I'll add a couple of things. I was formerly the senior assistant solicitor in Brockton, and I was very happy in the city, and Jay gave me a cold call and invited me in, and part of his pitch to me was the same pitch to you, this kind of team approach to law. And I find it really to be a much more positive relationship because it's much more like in-house counsel. That's what I experienced in Brockton. You have a situation where you have something unexpected happen, right? It happens in town halls every day. You have a plan and that plan goes south because 5 other emergencies come in your door and you have to respond. And it's really nice to be able to run to the lawyer's office. In Brockton, you had to run downstairs, but here we're by phone or by Zoom, or we even run down and make house calls where necessary. And I think it makes for a much more collaborative relationship where you have better results because you have fewer problems because you're attacking things on the front end, as opposed to at the back end when you're facing litigation or what have you. So I echo everything Jay said.
Great, thank you for that. Ms. Braccio, I'm going to go to you for question number 1.
Good evening. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Town council is sometimes called upon by the Board of Selectmen, other elected boards, and appointed committees to provide legal opinions about, for instance, interpretation of town bylaws, state statutes, or regulations or otherwise. Describe your approach to dealing with those requests, including whether it is appropriate or ripe to issue a legal opinion, what form the opinion should take, and how to balance legal opinion versus policy decisions. What do you see as town council's role in the discussion of policy issues? Thank you.
okay, so there's a couple things to unpack in there. Let me see if I can take care of that. So first of all, as to the last point on the I already spoke a little bit about that policy line. It is certainly true that we make every effort to get close to the policy line without crossing it, because we think that if we help you understand the ins and outs of the policies you all want to adopt, then it's going to help you make a good policy. What we've come up with over time is kind of really understanding where each different board of selectmen or select board might need some help in developing their policy and not crossing that line, but perhaps providing the benefit of our experience in other communities or as town officials ourselves to help you make those decisions by giving you a round of for instances or examples, or here's how we've seen it elsewhere. And that proves helpful, but it is a constant effort for us to make sure that we understand what your policy is or where you may wish to be going before we chime in. Now, there are some times where you may wish to go on a policy where we just can't get you there from a legal opinion basis. And we'll be honest with you. Where there's ambiguity, we're going to try and point it out. And if it depending on whether it's a public or private discussion, we'll figure out ways to try and get you where you're going, but we'll always provide candor, even if it's bad news. Now, in terms of the form of opinions, that can take all kinds of different shapes. So Kate does our labor practice, and there's a lot of times where those opinions are, it's a phone call. There's a lot of times when Mark contacts me on an open meeting law question or some other smaller question, and it's a matter of, I can answer that by an email or a phone call. Let me dig in a little bit and do that. And that's enough, especially in this day and age where not everything gets written down in longhand and typed up. Now, there are other times, and this has happened here as well as elsewhere, where, look, this is a bigger issue. We need something formal. It needs to be researched. It needs to be on your letterhead, and even it potentially needs to be presented to us at a meeting. That's fine. We can dodge and weave with that. We ask at the front side, how do you want to see this? Where is this going? Do you want us at a meeting? Do you want something formal? Do you want something fully researched? Is an email going to suffice? Is a phone call going to suffice? So we try and get to understand what you need. Sometimes speed and the need for satisfying an exigent circumstance answers it for us. But other times we will find out how much you need and what form you need it to be in.
Yeah, and I think maybe this is tangential or it dovetails closely to that. One thing we strive to do is figure out what your goals are. So oftentimes you come into a situation and a board is saying, I want this policy done. I want to take this position. I want X, Y, and Z. And you can prepare a document, a legal opinion or regulation to address that. But if you haven't really gotten to know the client, and this goes toward that team approach and understanding what that client's goals are, then you may be solving for problems that don't need to be solved, or there may be alternatives to get you to your goal. So I think because we develop these closer relationships, we understand the needs of the community and the goals of our boards. And so we can direct or give options in a way that others may not, because it's important not to look at things like, here's my task and I'm going to get it done. And you write up a policy without engaging in an interactive process with the client to figure out what their needs are. So.
Great, thank you, Sam.
Okay. Let me get my volume going here. Describe a difficult ethics issue you've had to deal with during your representation of a municipality, and to the extent possible, identify the type of issue, what approach you took to address the issue, and how the issue was ultimately resolved. Pretty high level. We obviously have a lot of time pressure here, but
I think because Kate likely sees a few more of these than I do. We all have anecdotes of difficult ethical situations. In fact, I saw an opinion that she wrote just today, but
I won't disclose the names.
Yeah.
No, I mean, listen, we get approached with ethical questions all the time, whether it be from employees. Should I hold off? Am I okay to?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if we were getting feedback. Whether it be employees, appointed officials, or I don't know if you're driving at whether or not we feel comfortable giving a certain opinion or something along those lines. But we deal with ethical questions all the time, and they're sticky. They're always sticky. The issue I was dealing with today was well, let's just say sticky, because because the details really matter. They're critical to any ethical analysis. And frankly, you can take as many 268A classes as you want, and you still may come away with the question of, geez, the answer on this one isn't so clear. But we have a lot of experience, and experience tends to inform our opinions in a way that others may not. So probably in the beginning of my practice, I would have given a different opinion on whether or not a conflict arose or not now, because I've got a greater depth of knowledge. But they can be tough to directly address with the employee too, because sometimes you have to tell people things that they don't want to hear. You're putting yourself in jeopardy here by doing that, right? Those are difficult conversations. But from my perspective and my experience so far to date is you just take it head on. And you give people your honest legal opinion, and they make their choices, right? And we deal with the fallout. That's with every sort of legal determination. That's what I've said to many of my clients. First, let me tell you the advice, and then you make a decision of what to do. And then we'll put the pieces back together depending upon what your choice was. So although it can be complicated, although it can be uncomfortable, it's important to have those conversations and have them frankly and honestly.
And we've had some conversations where we're past the point of being able to rectify or give advice because an ethics violation has already occurred. So we then cross into an area of how do we help a board or an official get past this in a way that can still be productive. Those raise all kinds of other issues altogether as to whether or not we can provide individual counseling, which we can't, if to the extent that there's a potential ethics violation, or whether we can kind of get to the point where we can help rectify the situation by giving practice tips going forward, or how does the board issue a press release? Sometimes these things you get into because you can't give much advice after an ethics violation has occurred, it kind of devolve into damage control, so to speak. That's just part of the business. And it's also part of being a counselor in addition to just being a cut and dry attorney on these issues.
Okay, so the third question, what do you suggest that town council can do to avoid or mitigate legal risk from actions of town boards and committees?
So this one dovetails nicely with the earlier presentation, so I won't back up over that. So one thing that we offer through, if you decided to go with, say, a flat fee arrangement, is that we offer pretty much unlimited access to counsel. That means a board chair who's about to issue or hold a hearing on a controversial project, say, for example, can call us ahead of time and we can issue spot. It means that we will be at that hearing if the board wants us to be, up to 3 meetings and usually more. We don't charge extra if it ends up being more a month, and help guide the board. In fact, sometimes we even help run the meetings if a board chairperson is not particularly experienced. So we try and work with things ahead of time. If you employ our office hour model, I'll go out and I'll do a site visit so I can understand the site or something like that. Again, talking just about land use. I know it's much more involved with that. So we try and, through our practice of teamsmanship first, try and get to know those issues ahead of time. And very often it results in a decision that's either the right decision or a decision that's more defensible, or sometimes a decision that you just have to fight for. I will say that since we've become involved in our towns, almost every single one of our towns, but especially the ones where we have hybrid fee arrangements, litigation has decreased. I did a litigation update last night in the town of Millis, where we've been town council about 6 years, no litigation currently pending. So we've been able to work with these boards in a way, and that, I mean, tomorrow someone's going to file suit because that's just how it works. But
Murphy's Law.
But by working with boards, especially boards that have big projects, we've been able to kind of wade through these things, negotiate, compromise, help them with sticky issues, work their way through problems. And that's all boards, it's not just land use.
Yeah, and I think the education component too, because we're so involved, we can perhaps explain to people who may be more litigious or sometimes they're just misinformed too. So having us there sometimes can lower the temperature because people have a better understanding of the process and what's gone on. So you can avoid litigation that way by just being, more educational.
All right, I suspect we may end up being a little bit like a soccer game where there's extra time for technical issues on our side, and there have been a couple of 3 minutes of that. That being said, I don't want you to run too far behind. So number 4 is, what do you see as the most significant legal issues and or challenges that will affect Southborough over the next several years, and how will you help the town address these challenges?
So, and we'll be a little bit more concise too. So having done a little bit of work with Southborough, I see the primary issues going forward are the same issues that we see in a lot of similar communities. I see a lot of financial pressure. I see that your costs are rising well beyond what Proposition 2.5 is going to allow you to keep track of. So working with Mark and this board on budgeting issues and creativity around those issues, other town meeting issues, that can be really helpful. Regional school work. I did a little bit of work on some regional school stuff a few years ago for this community. Every town that I'm aware of that has a regional school is facing strain and pressure with those regional schools, and it's a big issue going forward. Otherwise, for towns like this, land use tends to be a major issue. How you use the land that you own, how you manage the land that others may wish to build on is always going to be a key issue. You have a few other unique issues here. You have a relationship with a big tenant right down the, or owner of property right down the street, a school. We represent a few communities that have colleges, so we're familiar with those relationships as well.
Great, thank you. Lisa, you're up next with question 5.
Please explain how you would address questions related to areas of law that your firm does not have relatively extensive experience with, e.g., a particularly technical area with complex case law that your lead counsel and or backup counsel are not extensively experienced with. If you would seek outside counsel in these situations, please explain how you would expect to determine that this would be appropriate and how you would identify and select such outside counsel.
So we do have a sufficiently diverse range of experience in the firm that we can handle most issues, but we're not ever going to profess to be an expert in every issue. I'll give you a good example which will really illustrate this in pretty concise fashion. We represent the town of Millis, as I mentioned. Every town around here is going through PFAS issues with respect to their water supply. They have a kind of a PFAS issue on steroids because they've got 2 old industrial users that are located in close proximity to their municipal wells, which are all experiencing exceedances in PFAS. Now, I can work my way through, as can Lisa, on a 21E issue if it was basic, but a toxic torts issue where we would be seeking cost recovery from a multi-layered corporation that's international in nature is a little bit beyond what we would do. So we helped them find, negotiate with, and develop an arrangement with a firm that is more expert than us. We conceded that we didn't have as much experience. We offered, however, to work as the bridge between this firm under our flat fee and the select board so that we could help answer questions. So we're still involved, but in situations like that, we know what we don't know, and we're not going to try and pretend to know more than we do know. We feel comfortable with the range of our experience, but we will seek to get outside counsel or recommend outside counsel where necessary.
Thank you. Sam?
Town council generates many different types of written communications, for instance, correspondence with third parties, communication with town boards, committees, and employees, including legal advice and or opinions and court pleadings. Can you describe your firm's internal document management systems, which you'll use for the town, and your practice of keeping the town apprised of various categories of communications that you generate? For example, do you have automated systems to track that in terms of status updates and those kind of things?
Thank goodness for the tech firm that we contract with, which has developed multiple redundancies in our document storage, both hard drives as well as cloud-based storage. So in terms of our ability to categorize, store, and access the information that will help us give expedient and fulsome legal opinions or to litigate effectively without reinventing the wheel, our technology is right there. Obviously, we're a law firm. There's a lot of paperwork. We have multiple offices. We're actually opening a third office in New Bedford. So the paper is still a thing, and can be a challenge when you have multiple offices, but we deal with that as well.
Okay. Describe your litigation experience generally and with specific examples of litigation you have handled on behalf of the municipality, including cases resolved through judgments on pleadings, summary judgment, and trial. What cost control approaches have you employed? How do you balance the value of settling a dispute versus initiating/continuing litigation?
So we litigate across the map, state, administrative, federal courts, where in all those, obviously our municipal practice doesn't have a tremendous amount of federal litigation, because if it becomes a piece of federal litigation, it's likely to be handled by your insurer. But we do litigate in all courts at all levels. Trial level, we've got dozens upon dozens of summary judgment decisions, motions for judgment on the pleadings, whether they be for Conservation Commission or coming out of an administrative agency of the Commonwealth. We have a robust, more than half of the firm litigates at the trial level. More than half of the firm can do appellate level. I just had 2 SJC arguments in the last 3 months. We routinely argue at the appellate court. And as to the cost control, I would say that for our hourly clients, obviously we will be upfront with them on how expensive it is. And for the flat fee clients, they don't pay a thing because it's all included. If you choose that route, you could choose a pay for litigation route, in which case we'll work with you on as much cost control as we can. But litigation is expensive, no doubt about it.
Thank you. And Marty for the last question.
Yeah, and I think you're fine in terms of time. So as I said, yeah, I gave you the signal. So
Yep.
don't feel any pressure. But take 3 or 4 minutes for this last one. Give us your best, this is your chance, best closing argument for why you want the town council position, why you think you and your firm would be the best choice for the position, and what the town can expect from you as town council for the next year if you're selected for the position. So the jury's waiting.
Sure, I'll start. Oh, sorry. I was doing.
It on, so now we're good.
Okay, there we go. So I'll reiterate first what we spoke about before. We do have a passion for this. I've been doing this for quite some time now, and the reason why I love municipal law is the breadth of issues that we deal with. Every day is new, which can be horrifying, but it can also present really wonderful challenges. So you're never bored in this job. I think the way we approach issues is very collaborative in this office. So we try to capitalize on each other's strengths, and we'd like to work with you to grow even further in terms of getting different perspectives, assuming new challenges with the various, whether it be from pieces of litigation to just policy questions. We really love doing this work, and otherwise we wouldn't be doing it, I suppose. But we think we can be a real, welcome addition to the community because we're going to take you on as our own. You'll become part of our family. Sounds cheesy, but you'll become part of our family, and we will make the community even better than it is today. So that's our goal, and that's what we'll try to bring to the table, and we'll work hard every day. Every decision I make is, I put a lot of energy into it and a lot of thought to try to give you the best product. And so that's what I would offer to you all.
And I'll just finish by saying, you know, in this business, you're not always going to love all your clients. It's just part of it. And sometimes you have difficult clients and sometimes you don't. We feel really blessed that the municipalities that we work with, we've had really great relationships. And I don't think Southborough is any different. I came to Southborough, my first case was to deal with a case that was mostly done that we lost, that the town lost, and we had to get something out of it. It was a really hard case to negotiate and to get some value out of it, to develop some means of moving forward with respect to a complicated relationship that we have with another community. It was a good result. I enjoyed the work. I got to meet a bunch of boards. I then followed that up with some zoning litigation. I've had a couple of town meeting issues. The staff here has been a joy to work with. Obviously, we enjoy working with Mark. The board has had your board has had a couple different versions since I've been working here. Every board that I've worked with here has, in terms of the select board, has been professional, easy to work with. They might not even always agree with me, but we've always had good talks. We've worked through things. We've talked through things. And I think we've had a lot of good results. So.
Great. Thank you so much for coming in. It was nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
And
you all.
thank you for did a great job with your timing. So nope, you're 20 seconds just so you're in good shape. I know. Thank you.
And you'll see us punching welcome, but have a seat and we'll get going formally in a second.
Okay.
Okay. So welcome. And I'm going to go through a quick intro that every firm is hearing tonight, and I'm trying to hit every piece. So I wrote it down. So we're interviewing 4 firms for counsel. 1 is not available tonight. So we'll be conducting that interview next Tuesday. And then after that, we'll schedule a special meeting for us to deliberate and make a final determination. There is no public comment tonight, and there will be no discussion or deliberation amongst the board that you see here. We do have 1 member, our chairman, who is dialed in remotely, and she will be participating in the questions. We are recording the session this evening, and it will be made available to the public after the last interview is complete, which will be next Tuesday. To speak, you're going to have to mute and unmute on the laptop there. And then I just ask that when you're done speaking, you go back on mute so we don't create feedback. We have allocated 30 minutes for an interview. So I would ask that you do a 3 to 5 minute intro. Then we will ask you the follow-up 8 questions. And the 8th question will be a wrap up and should be about 3 to 4 minutes. Mr. Purple is going to give you a 5-minute warning. So hopefully you're in your 7th question to wrap that up. And then Mr. Healy will ask you he's our closer tonight. So there's 8 questions. Please pace yourself. And thank you for coming in. So I'll send it over to you for your intro.
Okay, so I don't have to search.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. You know, you'd never know my undergraduate degree was in computer science engineering because I can't operate today's systems. The young kids are smarter than me with the logos, but thank you for having us here. My name is Stephen Torres. I'm a partner at Westbrook Law, and I'm with, I'll introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Jillian Jagling. I'm senior counsel at Westbrook Law.
The first thing we'd like to do is thank you for having us in and for selecting our proposal as one of the 4 finalists. We have a firm that prides itself in its work in municipal law and our experience therein. I just briefly want to stop before I talk about us, talk a little bit about you and say congratulations to you on the work we saw you do with respect to the response to COVID. I was able to look at some of the things you did as a town in response, some of the things you did with your websites, not just the website, but the programs with the mortgages, and most importantly with mental health. I have seen personally the mental health challenges that COVID presented to many young people, many working people, many businesses. So I congratulate the town on the work they did there, because as our old friend Tip O'Neill used to say, all politics is local. We've learned in the last 16 months that all pandemics are local, and everything that has to be done has been done at this local level. Municipal officials, municipal officers, municipal advisors and lawyers. That's been you, and you've been on the cutting edge of that. And my hat's off to everybody. I spoke at a conference just a couple months back, the International Municipal Lawyers Association, where I've been active in teaching and things for the years. And I said to all my municipal colleagues, and just these folks who are leaving and the ones that are coming in, I say the same thing. You're on the front line of this, so congratulations. So I know I took some time out of our presentation to discuss that, but I thought it was so important because that's the approach we take to the practice of law. Although if you hire us, you're getting a team of people who come from international firms and Wall Street, some of them Wall Street lawyers. You're also getting small town lawyers and small town folks. My managing partner, Tino West, grew up in a small town in Vermont, was a town manager there, became a town manager here in Massachusetts. He knows exactly what you face day to day as a town manager. Myself, former in-house counsel with a city, 2 cities actually, for 4 mayors. I've sat where the municipal officials sat in-house, and that's one of the approaches we take to the practice of municipal law, is that we see it from your end. We are results oriented. We are there to help you manage your legal costs. We are there to work as a team with each and every one of you and with your department heads. So often Jillian and I are out on a project, and both of us are guilty of this. When we're talking to the municipal client, we say we, like we work for the town, like we're the assistant DPW director. But it's our approach. We're part of a team, and we want to provide that approach to you. We bring a wealth of experience, but I think more importantly, we bring a wealth of knowledge of how to work from the inside. Jillian will answer a number of these questions, and you'll get to hear from her. But she began her municipal work with the great D. Moscas, a labor giant in Massachusetts, and especially known in this area. So the wealth of experience she brings to our labor cases is amazing. Jillian's work down on Long Island, New York, where we also represent Nassau County and others, has resulted in us getting another case and another case after them because of the work she has done in cases she has helped us win down there. Very talented attorney, and I could speak that way about everybody in the firm. I could go one by one, but since Jillian is here, I wanted to point that out. And you do see that we have offices in New York and Pennsylvania and soon Connecticut. You say, well, why this big firm? Why this firm with a regional footprint? We bring that regional footprint experience to each of our municipal clients, whether I'm doing something in a city like Brockton or Fitchburg, that we represent, Fall River, some of the smaller areas that we've represented over the years, like Wareham and Sandwich. We bring that experience of international attorneys with a national presence, but we really have a local presence because every one of us came from a city or town. So you do get the great experience, but you also get the local commitments. I think that's what you see with our firm. I think that is our approach. I could talk all day about the wonderful things that we do, but I'd rather talk about the wonderful things that we've seen you do. What a great public safety complex I went by over here. That's an accomplishment. You know, today, a commitment to our public safety employees, school system, so many things. And we like to be a part of that. Right now, we're helping Providence build $300 million worth of schools. We talked about it, Jillian and I, is like, we build a lot of stuff, but when we're building schools for school children, that's a special kind of project. That's the approach we take to municipal law. It's about the end result and about managing costs. So with that, I'll yield, and Jillian will take our closing, so you don't just hear from me today.
Great, if you don't mind, just to take it. So Ms. Braccio is going to read you your first question.
Good evening. Town council is sometimes called upon by the Board of Selectmen, other elected boards, and appointed committees to provide legal opinions about, for instance, interpretations of town bylaws, state statutes, or regulations or otherwise. Describe your approach to dealing with those requests, including whether it is appropriate or ripe to issue a legal opinion, what form the opinion should take, and how to balance legal opinion versus policy decision. What do you see as town council's role in the discussion of policy issues? Thank you.
So, that is one of the most critical functions, because they say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Our approach with that is geared towards the size of the question, the rapidity with which you need the response, and how much cover you need to justify that decision as a policy decision, as a legal decision. So our approach is to identify what the problem is, identify the stakeholders that we need to talk to help us find the information, to determine whether or not it's a quick answer, because a lot of times in our preferences, you may call me someday or call Jillian with a question, and I'll say, oh yeah, we did that 5 days ago in Lawrence, and here's the answer, and it's a quick phone call and there's no bill. That's the best outcome of a case on a legal opinion. Then there may be a more detailed requirement for finding. So then we would, again, look at the statutes, we would look at the local ordinances, we would get a good command of the facts, and then we would come up with the laws that apply, the solutions that may be viable, recommendations. We'll back our recommendations, for you, so that it helps you make a decision. We're not the decision makers, but we certainly want to make the decision makers have as enough cover as they can. And by cover, I don't mean cover, I mean legal information, factual information, and analysis that helps you make the right decision. And a lot of times you will need a written opinion. A lot of times you'll need an outline of options. A lot of times you'll need, like we've been writing in several federal and state court cases, a full brief. A lot of times you need a brief for a case to convince a judge. Sometimes you need a mini brief using the same approach, facts, analysis, rationale, options, to help you make a decision. And we size the response to the importance of the issue. And we always try to put a price tag on your risk. If we think you could lose $1 million, we try to capture that and show you this is a difficult decision. You could be $1 million, a case valuation. So that is, our approach. If it's a small routine thing that we can do with a phone call, we want to do that for you because that keeps your costs down. Both Mr. West and I have sat in the seat where we have to watch the town's budget, not be on the other end. We've had to manage those budgets, and we know you want to keep your costs down, and that's our approach. That's why you can see the fee proposal, we put in. But that is what we do, and it's very important that you have all the information you need to make the decision. We are not policymakers. I do not give you advice on policy until you ask me to. I'll give you all the law in the world because that's my job, but it's not my job to tell you on policy. But if the law can impact a policy decision and harm you, if I don't raise that, I will raise that for you. And we will always, talk directly to whichever department head or the administrators that you want us to. That's how we approach that.
Great, thank you. Sam, question number 2.
Unmuted and volume up here. Can you describe a difficult ethics issue you've had to deal with during your representation of a municipality? To the extent possible, identify the type of issue and what approach you took to address it and how the issue was ultimately resolved.
Thank you. Okay. So as Stephen mentioned, we have clients in New York and Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and other states as well. And so this particular example is in connection with a client in New York. And we represent a public authority there. And they have a general counsel. And there was a recent situation where the general counsel, this individual works part-time for the authority and has their own private practice, separate and apart from the work that they do for the public authority. And so an issue came up with regard to that attorney's private practice. And we had to address sort of how to handle his position at the authority and what to do with his position. They liked the individual, disagreed with the actions that he took in his private practice. And so we had to look at the ethics policies and provisions that apply to that position. It's a civil service position in New York. So we had to look at the relevant regulations for civil service, whether in this case it's a classified versus unclassified, competitive versus non-competitive position, and as well as the public authorities internal policies. And this public authority is statutorily created. So there is an enabling statute that is the basis for this public authority's authority. And that statute also has various requirements and provisions that all need to be considered in the event that there's any issues with personnel in the civil service. So we became familiar with the facts that what happens in this case, researched all of the applicable regulations and provisions, and drafted a memo. I was going to follow up with what Stephen said with regard to our legal opinions. And in the majority of cases, unless something is very quick and you need an answer immediately, and even then we would likely follow up in writing, but in most or almost all cases, we will deliver a legal opinion to you, a written legal memorandum. Typically the format is issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. So what is your issue? What's the question presented? What's the applicable rule, statute, case law, regulations, our legal analysis on the issue, and then our conclusion. And so that's what we did in this case as well. Drafted a memo and provided what the applicable law is and what some potential courses of conduct that the public authority could take with regard to this individual. And we delivered that to the client and their board, and they used that to make a decision.
Great, thank you. What do you suggest that town council can do to avoid or mitigate legal risk from actions of town boards and committees?
Okay, thanks.
There we go.
Thanks, Joan. So that's so important, and that's part of our proposal. And this is something years ago when I first became city solicitor in Taunton under my first mayor there, I did right away. I set up training. We set up and so this is where the city attorney didn't have policy decision making, but I did it anyway. Said, Mayor, we're going to make mandatory training for all department heads, and then it later became all elected officials that we're going to train employees on public records law, open meeting law, ethics. We had folks come down from, if I say who they were, I'm dating myself, from the Ethics Commission to provide training to employees in the city. We had folks do public records training. A lot of the trainings were done in-house by me. And then a lot of times we bring a state official in to help us. I think training is so important. And one of the things we do in our town council proposals is we suggest that as a firm, as part of our, our base fee, or actually, I don't think it's a fee for it at all. We do it as part of being your town council, is to provide initial and recurring training for new officials, annual update training for officials on the 4 major areas that we impact. And again, there's ethics, there's public records, there's open meeting, and there's professional conduct. So we think that, and I know that state law and federal law requires sexual harassment training and workplace training as we grow to try to make these workplaces better for everybody else. There's a plethora of federal laws that provide training, and OSHA now it's applicable to municipalities since 2016. But we think that we headed off with training in all those major areas. And it's not my place, again, policy, but I would suggest that all elected officials, board members, and their staffers that are appointed, have this training and sign off on this training. I think that's very, very important. And that's how we prevent it. And then I think that is something that we would be happy to do. And to the extent that and I know the state agencies over the years have been happy to send folks down to supplement that training, with us, or to approve our curriculums. But I think that's where it is. I think that's so helpful. If you know you can't do it, then you can prevent them doing it. Not always. Not always.
All right, Stephen and Jillian, my name is Marty Healy. And I've got question number 4. Keep in mind your time, because Mr. Purple is very tough about this. And I describe it as some extra time in soccer because of the technical issues, but we're trying to keep to the half hour. So I just took up some additional extra time. What do you see as the most significant legal issues and or challenges that will affect Southboro over the next several years? And how will you help the town address those challenges?
Thank you. I think what we see is in the development of managing a lot of the public safety, a lot of the issues regarding public safety and compliance issues. There are going to be new state mandates on training, recurrent training, and there are going to be collective bargaining issues that you have to, negotiate. A lot of the state law will impact mandatory subjects, so you may have to do impact bargaining. So I think collective bargaining with respect to state law changes that we see coming down the pike is very important. I also think that we're seeing more, and it transitions back to my last question. So to save time, I'll refer to that. I think that we're going to see more challenge and more compliance issues for public officials. We're going to, and I don't mean elected, I mean appointed as well. We're going to see need to comply with a plethora of new state laws, and the training will accommodate that. So I think that I know that you have a pending, 40B. You've had those issues before. Those issues I think are easily handled through standard procedures. We've negotiated a lot of 40B developments. We've taken 40B developments from 420 houses to half an industrial park and 125 houses. We're always good at negotiating those things. But I think your biggest challenge is going to be educating your folks and keeping people in compliance with many changes in the law. I think those are going to be some of our challenges.
And if I could just add to that too, I think, not that this is necessarily a legal issue, but along with this comes many, is your infrastructure and whatever updates need to be done to that. The legal aspects surrounding that, from procurements to contracting to construction, those are all going to be major issues, and funding, obtaining funding.
That's a perfect addition. And a lot of what we do when we do our infrastructure work is we help you figure out how to get somebody else to pay for it.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Braccio, question number 5, please.
Thank you. Please explain how you would address questions related to areas of law that your firm does not have relatively extensive experience with, e.g. a particularly technical area with complex case law that your lead counsel and or backup counsel are not extensively experienced with. If you would seek outside counsel in these situations, please explain how you would expect to determine that this would be appropriate and how you would identify and select such outside counsel.
That is a very good question. And that is something that I was faced with day in and day out when I was a city attorney for 2 cities. That is a decision we have to make when we don't have the internal experience in that area, you do have to go outside. Some of the work that we do, our primary work is we are outside counsel to a number of communities. So city solicitors and town councils who feel they don't have an expertise in environmental, like I'm doing for the city of Marlborough right now with energy and environmental contracts for the wastewater treatment plant. They came outside and hired us. That is a construction litigation. We have an expertise in construction litigation. Many inside counsels hire us to do their construction litigation. So I agree that we would know when it's outside our wheelhouse, and I have a general rule, I'm not going to let the ortho do my endoscopy surgery. I'm not going to let the plastic surgeon do my heart. We know what's in our wheelhouse, and then we would negotiate the same rates with an expert in the industry. One of the beauties of Julie and I being so involved at the national level with the International Municipal Lawyers Association and locally with the Massachusetts Municipal Lawyers Association, we know who the experts are in each area. I see some of them sitting behind me in a certain area. I know they're experts in, waiting to come in next. And I saw some people go out the door that if it's a certain project that I would say, okay, there's an expert. We want you to get the most effective representation. I am not a telecom lawyer. I would bring in one of the telecom lawyers. So that's just an example of where, but we would make sure they do it for a rate that's competitive with what we're doing it for you.
Great, thank you. Sam?
Volume. Town council generates many different types of written communications. For example, correspondence with third parties, communications with town boards, committees, and employees, including legal advice and/or opinions and court pleadings. Describe how your firm's internal document management systems would be used for the town and your practice for keeping the town apprised on various categories of communication, status of projects, etc.
So I mentioned briefly earlier our legal opinions. So whenever there's a legal question presented to us that warrants memorandum, we will draft that memorandum and circulate that. Also in the past, we have prepared a monthly summary and status report to provide to you on a monthly basis that categorizes the work that we're working on. For instance, perhaps there's a labor category. So anything that we're working on with regard to labor would be listed in there, along with a separate column that has the status. And so you would have the category, so labor is a category, planning and zoning may be another category, Board of Health may be another, just for example, sort of how that chart summary on a monthly basis is kind of separated and segregated for you. But that's the idea, is that monthly report. But then of course, we're available daily. And so the communication and the status should always be known for everyone, but that monthly report is definitely a good check-in for folks who don't necessarily know everything that we're working on, but that would definitely be the go-to place to see what we're working on, whether it's done and who we're working on it with, and when it will be completed.
Great, thank you. Describe your litigation experience generally and with specific examples of litigation you have handled on behalf of a municipality, including cases resolved through judgments on pleadings, summary judgment, and trial. What cost control approaches have you employed? How do you balance the value of settling a dispute versus initiating continuing litigation?
Thank you. So I'll do this one briefly. It's not just 25 years as a municipal attorney and formerly a labor attorney. I've handled a great deal of litigation in federal, state courts at the appellate level, the Appeals Court of Massachusetts, the Superior Court. I'm admitted to a number of state and federal courts. My approach to litigation with respect to the most important aspect of your question is managing costs. Is first, we assemble the appropriate team to tackle this type of litigation matter. Next, we work with you to identify a litigation budget from the inception of analysis of the case, like we're doing for a couple of very large cases down on Long Island right now. I've walked them through, here's the cost of analysis of the case, here is the estimated cost to answer, here is the trial budget. And then what we do is we add case valuation to you. If it's very evident early on what your outside measure of damages were. If you lose this case, what would it cost you? Or if you're suing a construction company for a default in your project, if you win this case, how much it would be worth to you? And then you look at my estimated budget and you understand that there are breaking points. Constitutional law is principle. Litigation is economics. Sometimes you may stand on your laurels to the point where you spend too much on the lawyers and get a smaller settlement. We try to work with you very early on to add value by understanding the litigation costs to chase $1 million default on this contractor who didn't build your school right is going to cost you about 1.25 million. So if the contractor is telling you 5, I'd rather have you get the 5 than pay me $750,000 to get the 5. So that's the way we approach litigation as a matter of working with the client. I deferred discussing all the cases I've handled. Right now I've got cases as big as $149 million dispute on Long Island, the largest public construction dispute in Nassau County's history, from $1 million dispute over some roadways in Fall River. So there's a large breadth, and those are construction cases. Jill and I just won a major summary judgment decision down on Nassau in an employment discrimination case where the county prevailed thanks to us. We just settled a major case, a very delicate issue with a deaf individual who had stopped with the police. We settled that for a fair amount, recognizing the challenges the officers faced in dealing with this individual and understanding the challenges that individual faced too. And we were able to get a settlement. So I think that the most important approach is how we look at it, not simply how many cases we've handled, because we've handled a bunch over the years at every level: civil service, state court, federal court, arbitration.
Okay, you're doing great in terms of time. So take a deep breath, relax. All right. And this is your chance for really your closing argument for the position. Take 3 or 4 minutes and give us your best closing argument for 3 things. Why you want the town council position, why you think you and your firm would be the best choice for the position, and what the town can expect from you as town council for the next year if you're selected.
Want me to take this? I'm the closer. Okay. So we want this role because this is what we do. We represent municipalities. It's in our wheelhouse. It's Massachusetts as well. I live in Hudson. I grew up in Shrewsbury. So this is I view Southboro as an awesome client for me, and convenient as well. But this is what we do as a firm. And we want the opportunity to share our expertise with the town. The town deserves a suite of professionals who know what they're doing and can represent you in all areas, whether it be in the court or negotiations or arbitration, wherever it may be. I think we are the best choice because of our experience and our deep bench that we have. We're a team. We have 10 attorneys on our team. Stephen and I are here today, and our managing partner, Tina West, was in our proposal, but we have many other attorneys that we work with in our firm that have years of experience and knowledge that we can tap into all the time. I say we're a team because we are. We all know what each other is working on for the most part. We have weekly team calls once a week, every Monday morning. Our whole firm gets on the phone and we go individual by individual, attorney by attorney, explaining what we worked on last week, what's coming up this week. And the purpose for that is so that we can cross sort of pollinate in that way. And if Steve is talking about an issue that came up that I am familiar with, or I have some experience that can help with that, that's my opportunity to now understand, what he's working on, and I can lend a hand. And in that way, we're able to tap into all the resources that we have as a firm. What you can expect from us, I believe, was the last part of the question over the next year, is communication, communication, a presence. You'll see us. which is nice, in person, probably. In our proposal, we had proposed, was it in-house time? I forget what exactly we called it.
Residence time, I
Residence
think
time.
was the word.
We've done that
Residence
before,
time.
where we would come to the town house and be accessible to any of the staff or members of the boards who may be available to ask questions. And we're there for a couple hours every other week or so, or really whatever, ultimately you need and what works. But we're there to ask questions, talk about things, to deliver information. That can be the time where we schedule meetings. But you can expect to see us and hear from us. We are very responsive. I don't, compared to other individuals that I work with and that I've had experiences with, our responsiveness and efficiency is definitely at the top, for sure. So I think that you can expect to smile, because we're fun and we like what we do. We enjoy it, and I think that shows. And so I think that we'll finish it there.
Great. Thank you so much. It was nice to meet you both.
Thank you
And
for your
we'll
time.
be in touch.
Yeah, good to see you both. It's
Take
just
care.
about, I've got the about a half hour, so well done.
You're like 23 seconds. Great. Oh. Sorry. Use your speakers on. No? Okay, sorry, I thought I was getting feedback. Okay. Welcome. So I'm going to give a general overview to begin. And I wrote it down because we have several of you, and I just wanted to make sure I said the same thing. So we are interviewing 4 firms for town council. One is not available tonight, so we will be conducting that interview next Tuesday, and then we will schedule a special meeting to make a final determination. There will be no public comment tonight, and we will not be deliberating or discussing the interviews tonight as a board. We are recording this session this evening, and it will be made available to the public after the last interview is complete, which will be next Tuesday. To speak, you can hit the space bar on the computer. So we are actually in a Zoom room right now so that we can make it available electronically. So you'll hit it to just hit it to unmute and then hit it to mute. It's a little, we're back and forth a little bit. We do have our chairman on the phone right now. So I have to just queue her up to come in. She will be participating in the questions. We have allocated 30 minutes for this interview. You have 3 to 5 minutes to do your introduction. And then there's 8 questions that the 4 of us will be asking you. The 8th question is a closing question that Mr. Healy will be asking you. At 5 minutes left in the interview, Mr. Purple will give you a little wave just to let you know that you have 5 minutes left. Hopefully you're in your 7th question. Okay. There's 8 questions, so please pace yourself. And with that, I'm going to send it over to you for your introduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, board members and the Zoom audience. My name is Chris Petrini. I'm the founding principal of Petrini and Associates in Framingham. We're a municipal law firm that is based in Framingham that specializes almost exclusively in municipal law. Probably 95% of our practice is representing cities and towns exclusively, meaning we virtually never take on any developer interests or any interests representing folks adverse to municipalities. That we have a specialty firm that focuses on representing cities and towns. Just a little bit about my background, and I'll introduce the other folks here. I have about 35 years of legal experience. My undergrad is at Georgetown University. I'm a Duke University Law School graduate. I practiced law in Boston for about 15 years before I started this firm. In 2004, I was at Hinckley, Allen and Snyder, which is a firm that does a lot of construction litigation. And for several years, and then I was at Kavanaugh, Rosenthal, Peisch and Ford. It's a mid-sized Boston firm of about 35 lawyers in Boston. And I started this firm in 2004, just with myself initially. Now we're up to all four attorneys who are full-time with us are here today. As I mentioned, I was following the requirements of the RFP that people, I guess that's the lawyer in me. I guess I'm a little too literal and I apologize. But I did want to have people see the whites of our eyes as well to see who is here and who would be helping on these particular projects. And one of the reasons I wanted to start this firm back in 2004 is that I thought it would be important to have a firm that was a municipal boutique firm that specialized in representing cities and towns in a kind of a suburban setting where the clients would still have individualized attention for their matters, because there are certain municipal law firms in Boston, but they often have a lot of attorneys that we feel we have the best of both worlds, where we have a lot of expertise in our office with the attorneys, but you know who you're talking to and you have accessibility, and there'll be basically one attorney handling your matter. But as Chris will talk to, we also work as a team very well. So look forward to hearing your questions. We have about 17 years of experience. We presently represent several cities and towns, including Framingham, Sherburne, Leicester, and West Brookfield. We also handle special cases for certain cities and towns outside of those particular cities and towns that we represent. So with me tonight, in addition to myself, is my partner, Christopher Brown, who has 15 years of litigation experience. He can talk to you about his background, but he does great expertise in general municipal law, as well as labor and employment and typical things that you run into in municipal law, public records, open meetings, and conflict of interest. Amanda Zaretti, to my right, has 23 years of legal experience. She's been with P&A for about 7 years. She has great expertise in real estate, land use, and public procurement issues. She's also a marijuana expert, which I know is probably, I think if I recall correctly, Southboro went against. You folks don't have any, or do you? Oh, that's right. You do. That's right. I should.
Marijuana law, right?
Exactly. Exactly. That's right. They do have cultivate. Exactly. Just the law. So, Amanda Z has a lot of great experience in alcohol license as well as solar energy issues. Mike Terry, to my left, has about 25 years of legal experience. He's been with P&A for about 3 years now. He focuses on land use. He advises and represents planning boards, ZBAs, Concoms, and building departments, and he handles litigation in those areas. And then we have one attorney who is remote, who's of counsel, who did not come. So in that respect, I did not bring her up from South Carolina. I didn't want to take your instructions that literally, but in any event, I'll turn it over now to your questions, and you can hear from the other attorneys as well. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And if you can just hit spacebar. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Braccio, can you please read the first question?
Thank you. Town council is sometimes called upon by the Board of Selectmen, other elected boards, and appointed committees to provide legal opinions about, for instance, interpretations of town bylaws, state statutes, or regulations, or otherwise. Describe your approach to dealing with those requests, including whether it is appropriate or right to issue a legal opinion, what form the opinion should take, and how to balance legal opinion versus policy decisions. What do you see as town council's role in the discussion of policy issues? Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll respond to that. Yeah, so I would say definitely in Framingham and in the other communities we serve as well, there's a lot of times when those types of questions come up. Framingham, particularly because, as you may know, Framingham changed from a town to a city government just a few years ago. Chris and I worked with the Charter Commission, developing the charter. And now with the change to the city, there's a lot of questions about what does this provision of the charter mean? So we get those questions, and to me, it's, when you're looking for the form of what an opinion is, if I'm getting a question from a board, we're conscious of whether something is privileged or whether something is meant for public consumption to be discussed in an open meeting. So we can tailor our opinions either way, where it could be a memo, it could be an email, it could be actually meeting with the board and speaking with them about the opinion. Yeah, so I think that's our approach on that. And regarding the balance between legal issues and policy questions, this comes up in basically everything we touch, I think, because these are, we're dealing with issues that are of great importance, I think, to a lot of people, a lot of residents, businesses, where it's not just what is the law, it's what, how might this affect, parents, with kids in school, a business that's trying to, open in a certain part of the town, so we are careful, I think, in our opinions to point out, that this particular issue is a policy question for whatever board we're advising, and while we can certainly lay out options and offer our suggestions, like we're not trying to control that policy judgment. That's really for the board to decide.
Great, thank you. Mr. Stivers, do you want to ask question number 2?
Okay. Okay, my audio on now? Describe a difficult ethics issue you've had to deal with during representation of a municipality, and to the extent possible, identify the type of issue, what approach you took to address the issue, and how the issue was ultimately resolved.
I'm going to ask Chris handle this as well, because he does a lot of our ethics work. So
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a example I can give that's not confidential. I mean, in all of our communities, I'm one of the liaisons. Chris does this as well, but we're contacted all the time by officials for confidential ethics opinions when they have a question about, whether something that they're thinking about doing as a board member, as an employee, whether it might violate the conflict of interest law. And, so to say when is a difficult one, I mean, they're all difficult in a way. Some of them are pretty straightforward, like, can I hire my son? Like, no, you can't. But, there's a lot of gray areas too, where the answer is not always clear, and it's being able to have those employees trust us, the officials trust us to, first give us the relevant facts so that we can weigh it. A lot of times we get involved with the State Ethics Commission, or if it's, I'm thinking of ethics issues in particular, the State Ethics Commission, we do have a good relationship with a lot of the attorneys there on staff. I know a lot of them by name, but so we talk to them, we talk internally, but the issue that we're trying to solve obviously is help people comply with the law, and that's it's an important thing. And if there's options for them, we will lay those out, but usually it's giving them a confidential opinion, letting them know this is what the law says, this is what the situation is, and yes or no, like you can't do this or you should do something else.
Great, thank you. The third question, what do you suggest that town council can do to avoid or mitigate legal risk from actions of town boards and committees?
I consider that actually as one of the biggest responsibilities of town council. A successful town council, I think, takes action in giving advice in advance before decisions are made, because it's a lot easier, the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I think we take that into account, and we always appreciate the opportunity to give advice in advance. And so wherever possible, we want to mitigate risk, and we encourage our boards both through, we understand the select board is the entity, as in most communities that hire town council. So we could, if we were retained, we could work with you on a policy in terms of when and under what circumstances other boards could contact us. We actually have templates we've used, but we are strong advocates of having access to the boards, or have them have access to us, because I've sustained through my career, if legal advice is given in advance, you can avoid a world of hurt and avoid that decisions that end up being bad decisions that cost the community a lot of money or end up having adverse results. So we are strong advocates of giving advice in advance. And if we were retained, we could work with the board on an appropriate policy. Obviously, the select board would have the right almost immediately to contact us, but we think it's prudent to put some guardrails into place and to encourage your other boards and committees and the town administrator, Mr. Purple, and the division heads to contact us, because as I've said, we can help avoid a lot of problems with advice in advance. So it's keeping the lines of communication open and working with you folks on a policy that the select board is comfortable with to give us access and to work with you proactively. I've had cases where we've given advice that it isn't always followed, and the results are usually fairly predictable. That'll be bad outcomes, and we think that's one of the best things we can offer you is risk management and being proactive in that way. So.
Okay, great. Again, I'm Marty Healy, obviously one of the members of the board. And you're doing fine in terms of time, by the way. So I can see the clock, you can't. A little bit of an advantage, but you're doing fine. What do you see as the most significant legal issues and or challenges that will affect Southboro over the next several years? And how will you help the town address those sort of challenges?
Well, I'll start. I'll be interested to see if others want to weigh in on this, but obviously development and growth issues would seem to be predominant based on our review of different news articles. Southboro has had a lot of development pressure, both commercial and residential. So I think I would consider that to be a primary issue. 40B related issues. I know there's been, I believe there's pending litigation involving 40B. Mike and I are handling some 40B litigation right now for Sherburne. So that's a complicated area with a different set of rules. So that with respect to providing affordable housing, but also making sure that the 40B rules and regulations are placed into context as well with other rights of residents and conservation related issues. Mike, do you want to talk at all about the 40B issues?
Sure. I mean, that's my area, so that's what I would focus on. And yeah, certainly we are representing Sherburne, and that is a complicated matter, where it's actually the intersection of Chapter 40B and 61B, which is some recreational land that the town has an interest in. So it's very complicated. And I've been working very closely with the ZBA on that, just because we've been moving our way through the process, and there's a lot of legal questions that come up as we move on, and that has resulted in a number of opinions for the board as we try to steer them. We're not telling them how to decide the case, but we're just telling them what the law says and how it applies. So certainly that's an area I see. And in my prior work in Westwood, excuse me, we had the same sort of pressures with development and what the town's rights are, and how do you protect the community while also providing for affordable housing. It's a challenge.
And if you don't mind, I would like to jump it over to Amanda Zaretti, because Amanda does a lot of our work with, not to be redundant, but with marijuana. Why don't you talk about some of the issues that you've addressed in Framingham and elsewhere on marijuana related issues?
Yeah, because the industry is so new, and because the Cannabis Control Commission has been, I wouldn't say reticent about issuing guidance, but they tend to issue their working parameters in the form of frequently asked questions. So I've assisted a couple of municipalities now with preparing host community agreements, and also with discussing what they can do in terms of limiting the number of marijuana establishments, either by type or by the number of retailers. We've also begun to encounter the questions about delivery of marijuana products. And also we've begun to see the transfer of marijuana licenses to investors both in state and out of state. So there is the beginning of this aggregation of outlets in the larger industry. Very new, very interesting, very regulation-driven area of practice. So that's what I see. And I don't know if this is also an issue, but I think that water usage is going to be something that is going to face the town, that is going to accompany the development pressures that we face. I don't know how much need you have for school council, but certainly there are a lot of areas pertaining to infrastructure, capital pressures on your roads, on your water and sewer system and so forth that can be sort of a follow-on issues that I deal with in terms of capital projects and procurement and things of that nature.
And Chris, did you want to talk about some of the collective bargaining, labor and employment issues? Because that comes up all the time as well.
Yeah, so again, I understand that this is, you probably have existing labor council or maybe you do, maybe you don't. But even where we're not labor council, we still interact with them a lot. And because of my experience, I do the collective bargaining in Framingham with the police and fire units. I'm labor council in Sherburne. I understand the issues that municipalities face in terms of, the pressures to, maintain a competitive workforce, a well-compensated workforce, while at the same time, protecting the public fisc and, you're trying to control your budgetary growth as well. We've had proceedings at the JLMC, which is the Joint Labor Management Committee, which essentially, if you can't settle on an agreement for police and fire, provides an interest arbitration process. And I've done several of those. I have one coming up on Friday, which will be a virtual one, which will be the first virtual one I've done. But here we are in this age. So it's things like that, and just garden variety employment. I say garden variety as a cliche, but the daily employment matter where the town administrator has a question about, well, this person wants to go out on this type of leave, and here's my town policy. Here's this. I think I've probably for every day I'm in the office. There's a new issue probably every day in the employment world. No 2 days are the same. So those are the types of things that you're going to continue to face, and now you're facing them in a world where people have been working remotely, where we've had all these impacts of COVID that on employment law that are really still evolving. What is a good policy in terms of vaccination for your workforce? Can you require the vaccine? If you want to have people working remotely, is that a reasonable accommodation under ADA or FMLA? These are types of questions that I work on every day, and that it would be great to bring to you as well to help with the day-to-day issues that you face.
Great, thank you. Ms. Braccio, please read, ask question number 5.
Please explain how you would address questions related to areas of law that your firm does not have relatively extensive experience with, e.g., a particularly technical area with complex case law that your lead counsel and or backup counsel are not extensively experienced with. If you would seek outside counsel in these situations, please explain how you expect to determine that this would be appropriate and how you would identify and select such outside counsel. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an issue that we deal with from time to time in our practice. With this particular firm, we do handle many of the municipal law issues that are to be faced both in litigation and non-litigation context, but there are certain areas that any firm would be wise to find special counsel. One area this firm does not do is tax title, even though Amanda does a ton of work in real estate and easements and different instruments, and Mike does a lot of work on the land use and zoning side. Tax title taking is actually a specialty area that most of our clients refer out, but we will work closely with tax title counsel. Cable is another area that we tend to, that tends to be delegated out to other firms, but in all cases, we would work with that particular counsel. But in terms of how special counsel is hired, we would bring that recommendation to the select board. You are the entity under town government, and under chapter 40 Section 3, which basically designates the select board as the entity that chooses town council and related council. So any smart town council will be wise to ask the select board, whether they would like to hire this particular council, and we would state the reasons why a particular council, special council, would be wise and appropriate. And we would come to the board and seek advance permission. We would not take that role unto ourselves because it really should be a collaborative decision. We will help provide guidance because we work in the field. We know a lot of the different firms and different specialty firms in particular, but it's something that we would want to work collaboratively with you on and make a recommendation for. So I think that, I believe, answers the question. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything to that. Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Stivers, take question number 6.
Town council generates many different types of written communications. For example, correspondence with third parties, communication with town boards, committees, and employees, including legal advice and/or opinions and court pleadings. Will you please describe your firm's internal document management systems for the town and your practice for keeping the town apprised of various categories of communications?
Sure, I'll take this one. I think we pride ourselves as being a very green firm. We're generally paperless to the extent we can be. I don't know, I'm hearing an echo. But,
No, it's okay.
okay.
It's not you, it's him.
Yeah, so we try to keep as little paper as we can, but we do have, I think like a lot of law firms, we use a numbering management system to index matters. And then we have a network to which all the records get uploaded. It's backed up. We have a cloud, so there, we have both security and space for, all the, what may be. I think, depending on what the issue is, we usually have a routine in terms of who gets copied on different types of issues, whether it be, the town administrator, the chair of the board, of the Board of Selectmen, if it's a land use matter, if you have a planning board administrator or ZBA assistant, just different ways that we copy people to keep them informed. And we do maintain some paper files because, some of us are still a little old fashioned, but, so there's a variety of ways that we keep the records. And, I think that's probably pretty standard of a lot of firms, like how they manage things these days. But we're always looking for new ways to transform and improve. So,
and the only thing I would add to that is, again, this is a relationship that you are the client, so we would want this to be a collaborative approach. We could have any approach that would work, but most of our communities we work primarily through the town administrator, but then we also keep the select board apprised of key pleadings. So one part of the question that was asked is, how do we handle court pleadings? So we would, as a matter of routine, either CC or BCC, probably BCC, the town administrator, and the select board. We could come up with an approach depending on the case. And some of our contracts and our working arrangements that we have, we could lay a lot of this out. We've done this for other clients. In other words, I think the more transparency we have with you as a select board, how you want cases handled, how much information you want, because we've had clients that say you're giving us too much, and then other clients that say I want to see every single slip of paper, and that's one universe to another, and we can find what level of comfort you have working with the town administrator, but also the board. It truly is your decision. But I'm a big fan of keeping the board apprised because, again, you are the client. I'd rather have you have more information rather than less, because if you feel that this firm or any of your attorneys are going off on a tangent that the town or the select board doesn't appreciate, we need to know about that. And the best way to do that is to keep you informed and to have a good dialogue back and forth. And that will give us more guidance in terms of how we handle cases, because we're well versed. We've handled hundreds of lawsuits, in our career. I think I'm up to 500 alone in Framingham, and we have a couple hundred more with the other clients. And so we're well familiar on how to handle lawsuits, but it's the communication that really is key. And I think we can work with you. We have templates, we have policies in place that we can share with you, and hopefully develop a collaborative document to help move Southboro forward in a way that the board is comfortable with. So.
Thank you. Describe your litigation experience generally and with specific examples of litigation you have handled on behalf of a municipality, including cases resolved through judgments on pleadings, summary judgment, and trial? What cost control approaches have you employed? How do you balance the value of settling a dispute versus initiating continuing litigation?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, for the most part, when we are getting involved in litigation, it's usually because clients getting sued. And a lot of times, we're looking for a way to effectively end litigation as early as possible, with as little cost outlay for the client as possible, but in a way that achieves the client's goals. A lot of the cases that I have dealt with in the litigation field, where I'm going into court, usually involve issues of injunctive relief. So I'm going in to defend motions for preliminary injunction, which are really fun because you're usually getting papers and having to prepare, come up with an argument and go in to argue something, within a few days. I joke with Chris, we had a streak going for several years where I would take vacation at the end of August before Labor Day. And every year for like 3 or 4 years, we had a PI motion come in that I had to come back and get ready to defend like within 3 or 4 days. So, it's kind of a fire drill that I've been used to now. Also, through my labor experience, I do a lot of grievance arbitrations. I've done civil service commission hearings. I don't know if you're civil service here in Southboro, but if you are, I'm sorry. If you're not, you're all set. But it's, so I have that experience with different agencies, MCAD, civil service, the Department of Labor Relations. There's no shortage of different agencies that deal with different tangents of labor and employment issues. In terms of trial, do you want to talk about your experience, Chris?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to do that. So the vast majority of cases, and I know Marty, you're a lawyer, so if I'm not mistaken correctly, and the vast majority of cases are resolved through on the pleadings or through summary judgment or through mediation or settlement. It's a rare case that goes to trial, although it does sometimes happen. It happens more commonly in the agency context at the JLMC or Division of Labor Relations or Civil Service Commission. You're much more likely to see a case through a judgment in those settings. But when a case were to come in, what we would do promptly is to provide an evaluation to the select board and to the town administrator and whatever board was involved. We'd have to talk to you about how to best keep the board, say if it was a ZBA case or a planning board case or a Concom case, we would communicate to the board, but at a minimum, we keep Mark informed of what was happening, and then Mark can make a judgment about the extent to which the select board wants to be inundated with paper. I mean, we can figure, again, these are all protocols that we can come up with, but it's something we've been doing successfully. I think we've always been thought of as keeping our clients informed, and I keep returning to that theme, but it is such an important theme. But part of our initial evaluation will include an assessment of likely costs and what we think is a likelihood of success in the case ultimately. We think that's important because rather than be 6 months in and you folks are accumulating legal bills and then we have legal budget issues, we'd rather come in as soon as possible with at least an initial assessment. Sometimes you need to do discovery and the like to evaluate your likelihood of success, but that would include at least an initial budget as well. What we see long-term would be impacting the town if it went into litigation, how far and whether that initial evaluation would also evaluate whether there's a settlement potential early on in the case. To Chris's point earlier, that's advantageous for the town to consider a settlement that still protects the town's interests while preserving your public funds. So again, I keep coming back to communication, but it's been an effective model for us. And we've been doing this a long time, and I think we're good at assessing risk and evaluating costs and giving you folks a roadmap, and then we will have a dialogue and take the guidance from you as client, but we'll always try to make a recommendation because that's why we're here with a paid professional. So I'm sure you'll want our recommendation, but we want it to be a guidance back and forth. We have brought cases to Chris's point to judgment years ago when Mark was the assistant town administrator in Framingham. We had a big sewer case against the town of Ashland that we won. In that case, is still reaping benefits for Framingham. We used to get paid about $6,500 a year from the town of Ashland to transport all its wastewater from the Ashland border to the MWRA, $6,500 a year. Now it's been about $1 million a year for the last 15 years. So you can sometimes, litigation can be a tool where it basically is a positive financial benefit, but usually it isn't. I mean, most cases, to Chris's point, the municipality is being sued, but there are certain cases that the select board and the town want to fight and feel they need to fight, but that's part of a dialogue back and forth. But we would communicate and use our expertise to give you the best possible roadmap, and then you folks would ultimately make the decision. So.
All right, almost the end of the road. And I've heard there are lawyers who still use paper. Dinosaurs like that. I don't know any. Anyway, take 3 or 4 minutes. I think we're okay on time, are we? Yeah, okay. Take 3 or 4 minutes and give us your best closing argument for 3 things. Why you want the town council position, why you think your firm would be the best for it, and what the town can expect from you as town council for the next year if you're selected.
All right, so I'll take this. So why do we want to be the town council? Well, this is what our firm does. You know, we pride ourselves on, you know, our representation of cities and towns and the pursuit of municipal law. You know, Chris and I, he's a past president of the MMLA, which is the Municipal Lawyers Association. I'm on that board now. You know, I work with the MMA and Maya on different initiatives for, you know, cities and towns throughout the state. So, you know, we pride ourselves not just on, this isn't just a job for us, it's a profession. And it's something we really, public service is important to us. You know, I'm a Army veteran. I served in the artillery, and I lived in Germany. I went to Kosovo. I was went through a lot of stuff there, and then you know, and then I came to this profession and doing municipal law, which really has been very rewarding for me personally. I mean, I live in Framingham. You know, we represent Framingham, so you know the things I see. You know, think of an example was there was a handicap accessible playground that was being constructed on my way to work, and the contractor walked off the job. And so my job was to basically figure out how to get this playground finished. You know, so I got the performance bond from Parks and Rec. I wrote a 93A demand letter to the contractor and the surety. The surety gave us the full penal amount of the bond, which we were then able to use to go and hire a contractor to finish that playground. I still drive by that playground every day on my way to work. You know, and so it's things like that it's why we do this. You know, I think to see things like that happen. So why are we a good fit for Southboro? Well, I mean, as you can probably tell from listening to us, we really care about what we're doing, and we care about our clients. We care about getting it right. We care about keeping you out of trouble. You know, and I think that you know, those are things that are kind of hard to balance at times. You know, because there's a lot of different interests at stake. There's a lot of people in communities that are on different sides of issues. You know, and sometimes it's hard to figure out, you know, what does the client want, right? I mean, sometimes we've had boards and councils and commissions that you have members that are feuding, some that are, you know, grossly dysfunctional, you know, and you know, you have to find a way to make it work. And I think we've kind of gone through the baptism by fire of going through those situations, you know. So I think that we're well positioned to help any community, you know, through similar types of issues. We are right down the road. We're in Framingham. You know, I think it took me about 15 minutes to get here tonight from my house. So that's how accessible we would be to the board if we had to come in. And you know, we have no problem coming in. But you know, we realize also in the remote possibilities that COVID has created, you know, you don't always need to be in the room. You know, sometimes you can remote in or phone in or whatever, and things can still get done. What can you expect from us if we are appointed as your town council over the next year? Well, we pride ourselves on being able to transition into communities and set a new tone, you know, and that's not to say that there's anything, you know, obviously, you know, the existing town council's been here for a long time. You know, so part of it's assessing, you know, what were the systems in place? You know, what are the things that Petrini and Associates does well that we think could improve the systems you have? And I think a lot of that would be part of what we would be doing in the first year would be kind of assessing where you are, what we have to offer, you know, and what things could be improved, you know, what's your public records process? You know, how are you posting your meetings? How are you dealing with training for officials? You know, every year there's new board officials and people don't know, you know, about how to post meetings, how to keep minutes, you know, how to write decisions. You know, so there's lots of opportunities, I think, for people to learn from us, you know, as seasoned municipal counsel, that we deal with these issues every day. We do trainings, open meeting law, public records, ethics. Chris and I are doing one in like a month from almost, not from tonight, but pretty close. So yeah, so this is something that we would want to, you know, to bring into Southborough would be kind of an educational aspect of our role as town council to help improve the knowledge and hopefully experience for all of your various officials, because we realize a lot of people are volunteers, you know, and they don't always have the time to learn everything you need to know to do your job effectively. But so I think that's anything else to add, or
Just,
no?
yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. The only thing I'd say is that if Southborough decides that you folks want to make a change, I do think that our firm is kind of the best of both worlds, because we're still local. We're 6 miles away. You'll still have that individualized attention, and there can be real value to a community to have counsel that they know that it's the same person or same group of people week to week who know the community and who are very familiar with its issues and all the players. You know, we know Metro West issues. We work a few miles away, but at the same time, I think we bring a panoply of full municipal expertise that one person just won't have, and that's not an offense against Mississippiano or anything like that. It's well regarded, and but I think that having 4 or 5 attorneys who do nothing but this would be a real uptick and just a greater enhancement of Southborough's resources to address some of the complicated issues that you folks will face as a community this year and the years to the future. So I just wanted to make that additional point.
Great. Thank you very much for coming in.
Nice to meet you all.
Meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Motion.
So Ms. Malinowski, I am going to, you know, with very targeted certainty, follow your instructions and move that we adjourn our meeting so that there be no discussion beyond what you very sternly laid out for people. So that's my motion.
Second. Okay. Roll call vote. Mr. Healy,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Ms. Braccio,
Aye.
Is she there?
sorry, Ms. Braccio, can you do it again, please?
Aye.
I heard it faintly.
And Ms. Malinowski is aye. Thank you, everyone.
Lisa, have a good night.
Thank you.
Good, everyone.